What is going on, guys? We have a cool video here, and I actually did a similar video like this with my 2003-2004 Cobra Terminator, and talking about what you need to know if you're going to be purchasing a GT500. We did this with the Terminator. It was a really cool video, and I got a lot of views, helped out a lot of people. So we're going to be doing it today. We're going to be talking about 07 to 14 GT500. We're going to skip 2020 GT500 because that's so new, and maybe eventually we'll talk about that. But right now we're going to talk about 07 to 14 GT500. So as a little background, I picked up my 2014 GT500 about a year ago, but I've actually been following these cars since they first came out. I remember seeing a 13-14 GT500 roll up to a car meet, had my 2-valve Mustang. I was like, wow, it'd be cool to own one of those cars one day. Turns out, ended up buying one, and I love the car. So there are some things you should know about it, and we're gonna walk you through that. Before we get too much into the video, I want to just do a quick merch plug. If you guys wanna go check out MustangLifestyle.net, we got new stickers, decals, a bunch of different colors, and we also have the new El Chapo GT500 shirts, which will be up on screen right here. Go check them out. We have a bundle pack, MustangLifestyle.net. Help support what we do on the channel, and yeah, I'm super excited to have those things out for you guys. So make sure you go over there, get your size before we run out, and let's get back to the video. So the very first thing I would say to start with on this topic is budget. So you need to be able to afford one of these cars, obviously, but you have different pricing tiers between the, I guess basically the three categories. There's actually a fourth category, but let's just talk about the three right away. So there's 07 to 09 GT500. These cars typically go for 20 to 30,000 depending on mileage, condition, stuff like that. Then there's 2011 to 2012. These kind of have been all over the place in price, 28 to 40K in price. We'll come back to that. And then we have the 13-14, and these have been going pretty crazy in price too. 13-14, 38 to 50K plus. I've been seeing sometimes mid 50s for these cars, and the price has just gone through the roof as of recently. And I do think 2020 GT500 is playing a big factor. We've kind of seen the prices go down and then they go back up, but yeah, these prices, 11 to 12 and 13-14, they have been fluctuating a lot. Now that fourth category is the 2010. The 2010 fits into a very different category. Pricing is pretty weird on them. You can probably get a pretty good deal on a 2010. The 2010 GT500 was probably the best Mustang of 2010 because the 2010 V6 Mustang got a 4-liter V6, which sucks. The 2010 Mustang GT got a 3-valve, which a 3-valve's not that bad, but in comparison to the Coyote that came out in 2011 with the body style change, 2010 got, kind of got the short end of the stick there too. The GT500 definitely got the best option because it still got a GT500 engine, but this thing did not get widebands. It got knock sensors, no widebands. 2011 Plus got widebands. Why are widebands and knock sensors important? It helps with tuning these cars. It brings everything into this newer generation where we can tune cars, remote, no problems whatsoever. So 2010 just kind of was kind of the redheaded stepchild, and you'll actually see a lot of grabber blue ones for sale. I've seen so many grabber blue ones for sale, and I'm not saying a 2010 is a bad one to go for, but if you have an option to go for an 11 or 12 over a 2010, I would highly suggest it. But a 2010 is not a bad option. You can still tune them, you can still do a lot of different things. Definitely keep that in mind when you're looking for a GT500. So going back to my first category, 07 to 09 GT500, we were just talking about blocks. 07 to 09 GT500, they have an iron block. Iron block is great, it's strong, it is very heavy, but it is very strong. 07 to 09 GT500 also didn't get widebands, and they also didn't get knock sensors, which, it's not the biggest deal. You can put a wideband in with your SCT tuner. Just know that if you're pushing the envelope on 93 octane, your tuner is not going to be pushing the envelope, essentially. A 93 octane, if you don't have knock sensors and wideband to know where things are, that tune can basically cause the car to burn down if something's not right. And by burn down, I mean burn down a piston. So it's important to keep that in mind with an 0709 if you want to be a pump gas hero and make 800 on 93 octane. It's probably not going to happen, so just keep that in mind. Now 07 to 09 might be a pretty good bang for your buck, especially if you can find one for that lower end of the range. They're going for 20 to 30K, and the reason why this is such a big range is because some of them are low mileage, some of them are high mileage, but I've seen them kind of vary all over the place. Really, if you can find a low mileage 07 to 09 GT500, good paint, not heavily modified, for around 25K, I think you're doing pretty good. Now, here's where I think the best bang for your buck is. The 2011 to 2012 GT500. These cars got the cold air intake, which, big whoop. You can get these cars for sometimes in the high 20s. I put a range on here for 28 to 40K because that's what this crazy price range has been going. It's been going all over the place. So keep that in mind. But my friend Jeff recently picked up a Trinity swapped one. I think he picked up for around 28 grand plus shipping from the West Coast. So he got a killer deal, beautiful car. I'll have some videos on here. He got really lucky with that. An 11 to 12 can really be your best bet, especially if you get one all stock. You can grab one of these. You can do a Trinity swap. You can do a VNP swap, a Whipple swap. You can make a lot of power with these things. Aluminum block has that lighter front end, knock sensors, wide bands. Your only downside between not going to 1314 is, well, technically you have a 5.4 versus a 5.8, but we'll get into that too. You mostly just don't get the aesthetic mods that a 1314 gets, like the 1314 taillights, the 1314 bumper, the 1314 quad tip, which is one of the primary reasons I personally went towards the 1314. I wanted the best looking car, and obviously the 1314 gets the 5.8 liter Trinity engine, but we'll talk about that a little bit more. Now, I also wanted to talk about your method of purchasing. If you have cash, cash is king. You can get a really good deal, especially private party. Now, 07 to 09, if you have cash, cash is going to really help you out there because getting a loan for one of these older cars, it's kind of like an 0304 Cobra. It's getting harder and harder to get. Now, some credit unions, some special different places, they will value that car at that 25 to 30K range. But if you go to just a generic bank, they're going to say, okay, well, you've got a 2007 Mustang here, we'll give you about 10 grand for it, which is not going to help you out too much if you're trying to finance the whole 25 grand. So keep that in mind, especially if you want to get a good deal. For the 11 to 12, you can pretty much get a loan for these from most places, but depending on when you watch this video, that could change because, we're now in 2020. These cars are getting older and older. 13, 14, you're pretty much good to get a loan on them. I personally put down a considerable amount of money on mine. So I think we put down close to 30K on it, so it was pretty much a no-brainer on getting the loan approved. Now, in terms of 1314 got obviously the better looks in the car. These cars are also much higher in the price range and they have a very big range. You can get them as low as like maybe 36,000, 38,000, all the way up to 50K plus. Now, that's a very big range. We're going to talk about some different points and reason why there's some variances on these GT500s, which kind of applies to all of them. We'll talk about that in a little bit. Let's talk about 1314 specifically. So 1314 got the 5.8 liter GT500 block. So this is a one-off block. It's not shared with any other car, and you definitely have to keep that in mind. So this block got piston oil squirters. You also got the same Ford GT heads that the 5.4s had, but you also got better cams. These are the same cams that were found in the Ford GT. The 5.8 liter Trinity engine also got some different rods, so these were good for more RPM. The 07 to 12 cars had a red line, I believe, of about 6,000 from the factory, while the GT500 went up to 6,800 or 7,000 RPM. I personally have one. I don't really remember what my red line is because we revved it out to 7,000 anyway. So 1314s, of course, have wide bands and knock sensors. Just gonna throw that back in there. So making tuning very easy. The 1314 also got the 2.3 liter Trinity TVS. Now, a lot of people go ahead and swap this blower onto some older cars, and it actually performs pretty dang well. Now, the 1314 made 662 horsepower and actually went factory 203 miles an hour, I believe, with the very long 331 gear ratio in the rear end. On top of that, with an improved TR6060 with a better clutch and longer gear ratios to get rid of that second gear grind, which we'll talk a little bit more about. The 1314 was a beast. It got better cooling, got longer gears, got a carbon fiber drive shaft. The 1314 was very, very well engineered for, you know, especially the time, you know, 662 horsepower. These made about 600 wheel horsepower from the factory, and it does not take much to get that above 700 wheel horsepower, even with that stock supercharger. All right, so let's go ahead and talk about what to look for when you're looking at a GT500. So it's important to look at the miles. Miles on a Shelby GT500 are very different than miles on a regular GT. If you have 100,000 miles on a GT500, it's basically like having 200,000 miles on a regular GT. These cars are not typically daily driven, so you need to keep that in mind, and somewhere between, you know, 10 and 30, 40,000 is pretty normal. 60,000, 80,000, 100,000 miles is that higher end in that mileage range, and that's gonna reflect it in the price. So definitely keep that in mind. Like I said, these cars are not typically a daily driver, so look out for signs that these cars were daily driven. Not that it's necessarily a bad thing, but you should definitely be taking a look at this car as if it's like a show car, you know? Even if you want to daily drive it yourself, make sure you look at them very thoroughly, because the way that a previous owner took care of it can really indicate how well this car will be for you. Looking at the paint, look at it thoroughly. Like I said, remember, these cars are typically treated like show cars, people's babies. If you start seeing dents, dings, you're gonna find that the car itself was not taken care of, which means oil wasn't changed properly, you know, just various different maintenance things were not taken care of. And you can see that in the way that the seat's worn or the body is worn. So keep these things in mind. You don't want a high mileage, abused, daily driven and not taken care of. Now you can have a daily driven car that looks phenomenal. I wouldn't have a problem buying one of those. But if you're buying one of these cars and it just does not look like a show car, keep that in mind. There's probably a reason. The person probably didn't take care of it. It's very different from buying a regular Mustang. These cars are very, very different, and they're typically treated differently. So another thing is to look to see if the car is stock. Now, typically, you know, this could range from all sorts of different things. Look at the auxiliary idler, look at the pulley on the supercharger, look at the cold air intake, look underneath at the exhaust, see if it has cats, see if it has long tubes. You know, you're gonna wanna know that this car, you know, if it does have these modifications, you know, typically the person will have receipts for these things. If it's a dealership and they don't know anything about it, you know, what if the previous owner took the tune off before it was returned to the dealership? That would mean the car would be running lean the entire time it's at the dealership with random people, you know, doing pulls and stuff like that. So that is really important to look at the mods, see if there's a tuner that's included with it, and try to find out as much info. If the car is truly bone stock, that's really ideal. Now, if it has a blower swap and everything else, that is fine, but you're gonna wanna know some info about various different things. You know, so ask for receipts, ask for dyno, ask for, you know, tuning, any info you can find about these cars if they are modified, because you wanna know that these modifications weren't just thrown on there, beat the crap out of the car, and then traded it in or selling it because there's a problem with it. This is another little note. I had an issue with this day one with mine, intercooler pump, 07 to 12. Make sure that the coolant for the supercharger, which I believe is normally the right reservoir, make sure that it's flowing through the reservoir. On 1314, you actually have to pinch the hose that kind of comes through, and it makes a bypass through the intercooler reservoir. Make sure that intercooler pump is working. I know of another person that bought one without the intercooler pump working, and they had a pretty hard time getting home. Mine had some issues with some wiring, and it actually wasn't the intercooler pump. So we got it fixed up, everything's good to go, but definitely make sure that intercooler pump is working. Now, another one is compression check. If there's any question if the motor or engine is healthy, you want to do a compression check. Do it even if there isn't a question, if possible. But if there's any hesitation, you know, the person says, hey man, it just needs spark plugs or it needs coils or something like that, be skeptical, get a compression check. You're not necessarily looking for a high number because every compression tester runs a little differently. You're looking for consistent numbers. Now, if the thing was running like complete crap and you got an 80 on every single cylinder, it may just be on low compression all the way through, but that's not very common. Typically you would see, you know, 140 all the way through and then one cylinder at 60 or 80, and you would know that there's definitely a down cylinder. Compression checks are important, especially when there's a question of if the engine is good. Now 1314 got the better transmission. I still had a little bit of second gear grind, which we kind of fixed with a watt box. And then I also now have an MGW shifter, and now I have a Mantic triple disc clutch in mine. So we should be good to go. I pretty much solved my issue with just putting the watt box in there, wide open throttle shifting, and I never had an issue getting into second gear. Now, 07 to 12 owners have complained of that second gear issue, and it just grinds a little bit. It doesn't grind like your old school, it just grinds as it goes in. Sometimes it locks you out. A lot of people have fixed it with an MGW shifter and a clutch upgrade. So keep that in mind, drive a car, try to shift it a little bit fast, see if it has that issue or it doesn't. Now, at the end of the day, it really depends what you want to do and how much money you want to spend. I think the best bang for your buck is in a 2011 to 2012 GT500 if you plan to blow or swap your car anyways. If you want to keep a car stock, 1314 is great. It makes a lot of power. You can do very minor things to make it faster. But if you plan to blow or swap it, get a 2011, 2012 GT500 and you're okay with the looks of it. See, I had planned to blow or swap my 1314, but I also didn't want to spend all the time doing the taillights and the side skirts and the front bumper and the rear bumper. For me, it was easier just to buy a complete 1314 GT500. But the 2011 to 2012, you can pick one of these up for high 20s, low 30s, really nice condition, and you can go ahead and throw a blower on them. Also, 2011 to 2012 has the SVT Performance Pack, which comes with 373s. 373 for a 700 to 800 wheel horsepower GT500 is a fantastic gear. Now, I have a 331 on my 1314, and I had never planned to put a 373 in it because my end goal was to make 1,000 plus wheel horsepower. With the 331s and the long gear ratio and the high horsepower, it's going to be perfect. But if I was keeping it around that 800 wheel horsepower range, it would probably be a good idea to switch over to that 373, which is cool that the 11 and 12 SVT Performance Pack comes with that. Now, that Performance Pack also comes with some different stripes and various other different things. Now, I think I covered a lot in here. There's probably some stuff I missed, so definitely leave a comment down below if I missed something and I'll answer it for you. So at the end of the day, you're picking up one of these cars, you're hoping to keep it and enjoy it and not have issues with it. Now, there are some issues with some weak rods. That's the plague of the GT500 07 to 14. 1314 supposedly got better rods. Me personally, I bent a rod. I actually got lucky. Now, I was making somewhere around 800 wheel horsepower and 800 torque. So it's to be expected. Now, if you plan to make 700 wheel horsepower with one of these cars, you will be able to do it for a very long time. Now, remember, if you get a 5.8 block, they are very expensive. They're $7,000 to replace. And that's not going to be fun, especially if you need heads. It's going to be over 10, 12 grand, maybe even more to get another set of those. So I got lucky. I rebuilt my motor, modular head shop did the build. We got a lot of video stuff on that. 07 to 12, you got a cheaper block, but it's still very expensive to do these. So keep that in mind. There are a lot of people out there that have made 800 wheel horsepower for a very long time and they're good. But the rods, they are weaker than 0304 Cobras because they're not mainly rods. They are significantly weaker rods. Just keep that in mind. So anyway guys, if I missed anything here, leave it down in the comment section down below. Make sure you hit the like button and we'll see you guys in the next one.